Mr. President, before I begin my remarks, I want to mention the very deadly terrorist attack that took place in New Orleans in the early hours of New Year's Day. This ISIS-inspired attack took the lives of 14 innocent victims and injured at least 30 others. My prayers today, along with the prayers of so many Americans, are with all those grieving the loss of a loved one and with the injured and their families. In Las Vegas, law enforcement agents are working around the clock to understand the motivation of an Army soldier who blew up a Tesla truck in front of the Trump Hotel on the same day, injuring 7 others. We expect our federal, state, and local law enforcement to pursue every lead so that the American people understand what led to both of these attacks. Mr. President, I also want to mention the passing of former President Jimmy Carter, who died peacefully on December 29th at his home in Georgia at the age of 100. He was governor of Georgia, President of the United States, but was perhaps even better known for the work that he did after leaving office to promote peace and help those in need, most notably through his decades-long work with Habitat for Humanity. I will have much more to say about President Carter next week, but for today I just want to extend my condolences and my prayers to his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren as they mourn their father and grandfather. Mr. President, I want to welcome members to the 119th Congress, particularly those freshman senators who took the oath of office this morning. And congratulations to the new Secretary of the Senate, a great South Dakotan, and the new Senate Sergeant-at-Arms who are assuming their roles today. I am grateful for their service. Mr. President, the words of the oath, which we hear at the start of each new Congress, are a reminder of the profound responsibility with which we have been trusted, and that is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. 237 years ago, representatives from the states gathered together in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and produced something essentially unique in human history, a blueprint for our new country founded on history, not on history or conquest, but on a set of ideas. It was not a perfect document, as even our founders attested by making provisions for amendments, but it was and remains one of the greatest and most important political documents in the history of the world. It has made us as a country, it has made us a country that people around the world look to as a beacon of freedom, a shining city on the hill. And it is the solemn responsibility of those of us here in Congress to preserve our Constitution, to guard it against enemies both foreign and domestic, and to ensure that it continues to stand so that our nation continues to stand as a bulwark of freedom and human rights. Mr. President, when it came time to draft the Constitution, the founders established safeguards, checks and balances throughout our government to keep the government in check and ensure that the rights of all Americans were protected. One of those safeguards was the United States Senate. In his discussion of the Senate in Federalist 62, the author notes, and I quote, "A Senate as a second branch of the Legislative Assembly, distinct from and dividing power with a first, must be in all cases a salutary check on the government. It doubles the security to the people by requiring the concurrence of 2 distinct bodies in schemes of usurpation or perfidy." He further notes, and I quote again, that as the improbability of sinister combinations will be in proportion to the dissimilarity in the genius of the 2 bodies, it must be politic to distinguish them from each other by every circumstance which will consist with a due harmony in all proper measures and with the genuine principles of republican government, end quote. And the founders did indeed distinguish the House from the Senate. They made the Senate smaller and senators' terms of office longer, with the intention of creating a more stable, more thoughtful, more deliberative legislative body to check ill-considered or intemperate legislation and protect the rights of the American people. And as the past 237 years attest, it is a structure that has served this nation well. Unfortunately, today there are a lot of people out there who would like to see the Senate turn into a copy of the House of Representatives. And that, Mr. President, is not what our founders intended or what our country needs. And one of my priorities as leader will be to ensure that the Senate stays the Senate. That means preserving the legislative filibuster, the Senate rule that today has perhaps the greatest impact on preserving the founders' vision of the United States Senate. It also means restoring the Senate as a place of discussion and deliberation. And that includes empowering committees, restoring regular order, and engaging in extended debate on the Senate floor where all members should have a chance to make their voices and the voices of their constituents heard. We have a lot to do this Congress. Border security, extending the tax relief Republicans delivered during the first Trump administration, lifting burdensome and expensive government regulations to help American businesses and families flourish, providing for our nation's defense in an increasingly unstable world, bringing appropriations bills to the floor for serious deliberation so that we make the best possible use of taxpayer dollars, an overdue farm bill to update farm programs for farmers and ranchers to reflect current agriculture needs. And, Mr. President, the list goes on. Mr. President, in past years, I've listened to speeches delivered by other leaders welcoming members to the new Congress and discussing the agenda for the coming months. I now find myself in the position of delivering that speech. My Republican colleagues have trusted me to lead our party and the Senate in the next Congress, and I will work every day to be worthy of that trust. My philosophy of leadership comes from my dad. He was a basketball coach at our high school, and he had some very strong opinions about the right way to play. Sports to him was not about personal glory. It was about elevating the team. He hated ball hogs. If someone else was in a better position to take the shot, you always made the extra pass. You didn't try to pad your own statistics. It's an attitude which I've tried to carry with me throughout my life. And it's an attitude I intend to carry with me to the leader office. My job is to be of service to my colleagues and to our country. Mr. President, I'm here today addressing the Senate in this role because of the confidence my colleagues have placed in me. But I'm here, first of all, because of the confidence placed in me by the people of South Dakota. Without the trust that they've given me, I would not have had an opportunity to serve at all, much less have the opportunity to serve as the majority leader of the United States Senate. And my first priority here in Congress is always to serve the people of my state. Mr. President, I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, the town of Murdo. Population today roughly around 500 people. We didn't even have a traffic light when I was growing up there, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. Life in Murdo had a beautiful simplicity. Sure, it had one or two drawbacks. With a population that small, we Thune kids could be sure that our parents would have heard all about any of our misdemeanors before we even made it home. But small-town life was wonderful. In Myrtle, you know everyone, and everyone knows you. And that gave us a sense of community and belonging that we carry to this day. I remember the day I told my mom that I was going to run for Congress. She was excited, obviously, and confidently told me, "I know that you'll carry Murdo." In Murdo, I learned the character of South Dakotans, the work ethic, the commitment to freedom coupled with a belief in personal responsibility, the sense of responsibility to the broader community. Growing up, we knew that if a roof collapsed under the weight of snow or a windstorm came through and wiped out a barn, or we lost a friend or a family member, the whole community would rally to help. And that same attitude is reflected in towns across our state. The South Dakota values I learned growing up helped shape my political philosophy. My belief that government should be limited and that it's best when it's closest to the people, and that if a matter can be handled at the state or the local level, it should be. That the legacy of the past is something to be cherished and preserved while leaving room for change and adaptation when needed. That freedom is a sacred gift and one that must be defended, and that with freedom comes responsibility. And finally, that while government is necessary, government is not where we should look for salvation. Mr. President, none of us gets where we are alone, and I owe thanks to many people. To my parents, Pat and Harold, who gave us Thune kids undying love and commitment, a strong set of values, and the most precious gift of all, faith. To my brothers and sister, to my beloved wife, Kimberly, who is here with me today. And let me say, Mr. President, that I married up. And I'm grateful every day for Kimberly's love and wisdom, her advice and support and her endless patience. It's not an easy thing to be married to a member of Congress. It's not an easy thing to have a member of Congress for a dad either. And I'm grateful not only for my wife's enduring support, but for the support of my daughters, Brittany and Larissa. They are here today in the Senate as well with their husbands, Luke and Scott, and with all of our grandchildren, John Mark, Lucy, Henley, Hewitt, Haven, and one yet to be named, little one on the way, who have brought me and Kimberly an immense amount of joy. Mr. President, not one of us here in Congress could last a day without our staffs. And so I want to thank all of those who spend and have spent long days and long nights in my office serving South Dakotans and the American people. Finally, Mr. President, I thank God who has richly blessed me in every way. As it says in the Scriptures, for from him and through him and for him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. Mr. President, I yield the floor.